All right, this was not an easy box to lift. Today I get to take a look at something that I have been wanting for a very long time. This is the VEVOR 132-pound anvil in black. Look at that monster. So I can't see that the Pritchell hole goes all the way down to the bottom as well as the Hardy hole. That is a monster. So black is cool just because it looks good, but black is also cool because you've probably seen the blue ones. The blue ones are actually that color because they have a top plate rating of 50 HRC. This one in the black, this is the higher end one. This has a 55 HRC top plate rating. Now you can argue all day about which one's better, but in my opinion, this one is definitely the better one. 55 is about as high as you want to go. 55 is perfect for me because that's going to provide a nice hard surface that is going to be more resistant to damage, but it's still going to be durable enough that I can beat on it without having to worry about damaging it. And I can see we got a light oil coating on here, which is great, so we don't have to worry about it having any kind of a rust or anything like that. You know, this is a cast anvil. I can't even really see the parting line on here, which is surprising. So they actually did a really good job of prepping this thing. It is still fairly sharp on here, which is actually the way that I like it, because what that means is I can actually set this the way that I want it. So for example, I might want to just knock this down a little bit, have an 1/8 inch radius, or I might want to go a little deeper, have a 1/4 inch radius. It really depends on how steep of an angle I want to have. But one thing I really like about it is we have a perfectly flush surface right here. So we can make a perfect 90-degree bend and basically just use the anvil as that gauge. So I'm probably just going to grind this down a little bit here on the front so that I got something that's already preformed. But it really doesn't matter because as you start using it, it's going to start bending that over anyway. So it's really up to you. I do have a little bit here on the Hardy hole, but that looks like I can just knock off with a hammer and a chisel. But as far as like forming this, it's really up to you. Probably more important to the Hardy hole tools that you've got as to whether or not you want to actually round that surface down. But I really like the shape of this horn. Very nice round face on there, so I can put like, you know, whatever I want to in there and then bend it around it. I know I'm going to have a perfectly round shape and it's going to be the same consistent every time I do it. Now I was actually so excited about this, I made my very first Hardy hole tool. It has a 1-inch square base on it, so I'm going to see if that fits. Like a baton for Batman or something. So not quite because of this little bit sticking out right here. So it's kind of hard to see, but it's right here. There is just a tiny lip that is overhanging right there. I'm going to see if I can just break that off. Oh. Crisis averted. Okay. Yeah, it looks like it just fell out. So this is not a perfect 1-inch square. I believe it said it's like a 1.1 inch, but that's still close enough that I'm going to be able to use this tool. Now the Pritchell hole is about 1 1/8 to 1 3/16. So if I want to make a holdfast for this, I would probably use something about a 1 1/8 inch rod, which is going to be a gigantic holdfast. But the fact of the matter is you can do that with that. Which also means if I want to bend some really big steel, I can actually use this Pritchell hole for that. Most of them are too small for that. They're going to be good for like if you want to put a plate on there and then you want to drive a drift through it. Smaller holes can be good for that, but actually having a larger hole, you can actually just set something on top of that. So if I wanted to, I could create something that would sit on top of here that would be a little bit smaller, so if I want to do drift work, I could do that. In my opinion, this is actually more adaptable, but really to each their own. That's one of the great things about anvils. You make it the way you want it. Now there is a little bit of roughness on here. As you start actually doing work on the horn, it's going to bust all this flat. You don't really have to worry about that, but if you want to have a perfect finish right away, then of course you can take a grinder to that. I'm not really worried about that. I think that having the paint protection on here is actually more important. And then like I said, whenever I start using it, it's going to knock all that down anyway. Now something interesting that happened by pure luck, I cut this down to 4 inches. That is actually the perfect length for that. So if you want to make your own Hardy hole tool and you want it to get as much grip on here as possible, 4 inches is the number. But like we saw before, we could stick stuff all the way down through the base. So if we make an anvil base that has this hole open, we could push rod all the way to the floor. That is a beautiful surface on there. Let's see how flat that is. Yeah, you cannot see any light through there at any angle. Nice. Now the reason I have this is because I want to do a rebound test. Naturally, you can't review an anvil without a rebound test. Different people have different opinions on how useful a rebound test is. I think the rebound tests are actually very useful. So this is going to be an indicator to help tell you how hard that surface actually is, and then also how dense the anvil is. So we're looking at about, I would say 8.5, but we can play that back. So about 85% rebound, which still is not that bad. We can actually go a step further from that. I have a hardness file set, so I'm going to start with a 60. So we'll see what 60 looks like. So we can't see right there. We do cut it with a 60, so it is softer than a 60. Let's go with a 55. Nope, it just glides across the surface. So this is in fact a 55 HRC surface. That's pretty awesome. I could actually feel it gliding across the surface with that 55. So what is the benefit of having a hard surface? The benefit is, if I was to take this 3-pound sledge and I was to start smacking this shaft into the top, it would imprint this shape into that surface. That's a heck of a ring to it. That's cool. So if I then had that little concave shape and then I went to go and forge something else and I put it on top of that, this would then have that shape. So by having that hard surface, it will resist getting those new shapes unless of course you start cold working steel. You always want a hot work steel if you're going to be doing that, or if you're just doing mechanic work, it doesn't really matter. But if you want to maintain the best possible surface, you want that to be hard. 55 HRC is the ideal HRC. So I got a lead tester here. I'm going to try this. 50, 66, 58. So they gave me an average of 58.6. Let's try it again. 62.7 HRC, 61.6. So this is actually reading a little bit high. That's interesting. Gas is not the best thing to use for this, but it does work. Cool. So let's take a look at that surface. Nothing. That is still in perfect condition, even after all that. So yeah, this is an incredible anvil. And I wasn't even heating this up all the way. Like, it's supposed to be hotter than that. We could see that it turned red, but it wasn't really as red as it should be. So even slightly cold, it still did not touch that surface. So I think the most interesting thing about this anvil is just the way that it makes me feel. Because I'm experiencing something that is kind of unusual for me. I don't normally feel proud to own a thing. Brings up this like almost caveman feeling for me. The fact that I'm able to do this to steel, and it's something that like not everybody can do, it's just an awesome feeling. So yeah, I mean, I'm in love with this anvil. This is an awesome anvil.